In America, there is one divorce approximately every 36 seconds. That's nearly 16,800 divorces per week and almost 876,000 divorces a year. The average length of a marriage that ends in divorce is 8 years. The average age for couples going through their first divorce is about 30 years old. For more info, check out mckinleyirvine.com. My special guest is my husband today, Ken Marshall. Ken and I were once one of those divorce statistics. We were married for 6.5 years and then separated and divorced. Then after 2 years, after having paid our attorneys in full, we reconciled. There's only one reason that we now have been married for 25 years, and that is we have a big God that can do the impossible. Once back together, it took work, but the results have been totally worth it. Both Ken and I have witnessed couples struggling in their relationships. And why? Because the same mistakes are made over and over and over again. And today's show is called Text Wars. The topic is about how to get past the mistakes in the relationship and to learn what is the best way to work through the issues. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi. So what do you think is one of the most common mistakes when people struggle with relationships that they make over and over again?
I think they overtalk. For a man in particular, they'll try to overcompensate for the lack of communication prior to the separation, and they'll try to overcompensate for that and further alienate their spouse.
Now that is in case that the woman is the one that wants to leave the marriage and the guy wants to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So because the more they talk, what does that do to me? I remember when that was us, when you were trying to fix it with gifts and being nice, and whatever you did, I just had this screen up, not happening, basically. Excuse my language, but screw you, right? So that's how my attitude was. So
yeah.
and I remember that. But now today, when we're helping other people, you know, do you think that is still one of the biggest common mistakes?
Oh yeah. Typically, what we try to do, and in particular, you know, the women are talking to you and the men are talking to me. When we make our first contact, it's because the guy has blundered along for a period of time. And oftentimes he tells me all the great things that he'd done. I mean, he suddenly has changed. But their mistake is thinking that their partner, their wife, had said, you know what, if you treat me better, then I'll change my mind. But that's not the case, because she just sees him as he was, not necessarily. So my recommendation is always just put the brakes on, give her the time to begin to process this.
So what is it that they should do? Because guys are trying to fix it in the olden days, what they kind of wish they had done probably more of.
Right. They start buying all the marriage help books. You know, they start buying all the material that they should have been reading, and they start stocking up. But by that time, the wife has already made her decision that I'm done. And you know, each divorce is going to be different.
Right.
So, but I know that when we talk to people, typically it's the guy trying to overcompensate and trying to make good on where he went bad. And so my recommendation is when we start talking, I say, okay, you're going to have to just really back out. You know, cut the attempts at making communication. If you need to communicate, start communicating with some Christian brothers. And
so you're saying don't communicate to the wife at all, or limited communication? Keep it like prompt and short.
Very limited. It's a yes, no.
And what do you think that will accomplish?
I think first, a lot of times the woman feels a pressure, because when she makes the decision to dissolve the marriage, she gets pressure from everyone and everywhere. And oftentimes it can be from former friends, because the friends see that, you know, things are not the way they were, and so they try to interfere and such. The woman really wants, I just want a shell of protection around me. So when the guy starts just making simple communication like yes, no, okay, no I love yous.
No.
No, I'm like,
Oh,
I'm really, really sorry.
I remember you sending me these cards with animals hugging each other on
I
the
know.
thing. Oh my
Buddies,
goodness.
whatever.
I cut them up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so that's a no too, right?
The overall idea is that it took a lot for the woman to say, stop. If you get in there and you try to change her mind, it's just, once again, for her, a matter of her taking your advice. Because up to that point, chances are she was going along with whatever you said. And then once, if she's going to do that again, she feels like she's surrendered this toehold that she has.
Now, one of the common mistakes that I remember that was as well when we were apart, as what I see in common relationships, is that when they are apart, that the husband will try, especially if he wants to get back into the picture, that he will try to give her as much financial help as possible. But I'm not sure if that's the answer to get her that comfortable. What do you think about that?
It definitely plays into the relationship, but that's really something to be handled on a kind of as-is basis, because not every circumstance is the same, particularly financially. I know what you're getting at, and it falls back into what I was saying, is that I'm suddenly going to do all the things that I never did before, because now I know what good behavior is, and I'm so afraid that I'm going to lose you. I'm going to do everything I can to repair that relationship. For a guy, I think the first strategy is just pull out and allow her the time that she needs to resolve.
And that's minimum contact during that time, right? Minimum contact. Mm-hmm. And it's not say I ignore you, but one of the most common mistakes I see is text wars. Texting and bickering back and forward. So what I think I would recommend to a person like that is that just don't text at all. You can text briefly, like cordially, short, but don't go in the tit for tat back and forward. Have you seen, because you've been helping people as well. I
think that basically there's only 3 words the guy should be saying: yes, no, and okay.
Well, that's almost too limited, don't you think?
Oh,
so?
no. If it's anything more than that, it's really going to add, because a guy is really hurt and he's trying to, again, overcompensate. Whatever you do not start saying I love you or I'm so sorry and all these things, because that just really helps the thing collapse.
There's more to this, and it's kind of interesting to see it from a perspective of us that know what you're going through. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi there, this is Glenn Matthew on Barb TV, and I'm happy to have been here today and shared with Barb. She's awesome. I just want you to be sure and help her out, because she is very, very on spot with what she's doing. She's encouraging the body of Christ. She's bringing live the people that are in the body doing the work, and she is making it so that you can have it come right to your screen, right to your phone, right to your iPad. And so invite her into your home, invite her into your heart. That's Barb TV.
Today we're talking about text wars, struggling relationships, what to do, but mostly what we're really talking about is what not to do. An easy fall that many of us have done, and many of us have made the mistakes, because we start reacting out of pain and hurt instead of common sense, what would work the best. So when you actually think you're fixing it, you're making it worse. So what is it that you need to do, and how does God fit in the picture of all of this? And Ken and I were apart we were married for 6.5 years, and we were apart for 2 years before we got back together. And what does it take to actually get back together? And this sounds like the hardest part, but it's actually the easier part is what comes after that. And we've talked about that before, because we both thought the hardest part we were apart. But really, the real work started when we realized we didn't need each other and we got back together.
Yeah, my guess is that, again, when we talk about the whole divorce process, this thing it's a long animal. I mean, it involves children, it involves parents, it involves friends and work and things like that. And I think that to jump, I mean, you just jumped the Grand Canyon here as far as talking about when the divorce happens and then the reconciliation after the reconciliation. I mean, those are two different planets. And I don't want to confuse the two, because to answer your question, sure, when we agreed to reconcile, there was so many more challenges to overcome. But I do think that for people who are watching the program and they want to have a better idea, is I'm in a divorce situation. What do I need to do next?
Right.
We've talked about how for a guy, just to limit the conversation. I'm not really sure how the woman's perspective is, though I have a feeling that if
one thing I think that is important as well is when there finally is some communication, for the guy not to run to the girl and say, oh, we talked at least 10 minutes cordially, let's have a date. That is a no-no. They gotta wait. They gotta allow this time. And I think often with the guy that they are more like a one focus. So they said, we've dealt with this, there's a problem, let's move
Problem
on,
solved.
and we're out of there. And the girl, like the crockpot story, it's just starting. They have been dragging this 3 or 4 years, and now bang, and they're done.
Yeah.
So what is it that the guy needs to understand then, to not be that microwave, but really to understand that crockpot syndrome, right?
The absolute first thing the guy needs to understand is he blew it. He blew it. She did not blow it. He's in this situation because of what he had done. Now, how much of what she done and so on and back and forth, okay. But he cannot take responsibility for what she did. He cannot take responsibility for what the friends or the mom or anybody else did. He can only take responsibility for what he did. And once he takes on that responsibility, then he can start addressing things, and he has to look deep at himself. And that's where God comes in, because the God experience is one that used to say, Lord, help me. What have I done? Why did I put myself here? And then all of a sudden, God enters the picture. Along with God, fortunately, comes a few of his servants, either pastors or friends, people that know the gospel. And what they'll do is they'll start to steer you towards a closer relationship with God. They won't try to run over to your ex's house.
Now,
and
I think that's
pass
actually
notes.
important, because that happened to us. I had a pastor run over to my house and say things and reconcile and fix and blah. And I remember kicking him out. But it is so important, I think, that when people start working with the individuals that are going through a struggling situation, that they don't just pick out the people that will talk along with them, but actually will mentor them for whom they are, where they're at, and to draw them close to God, instead of doing all the other stuff. Because I remember I had 3 or 4 people I would call every single day and just throw it all out, but they all would talk along with me. And I think that's a mistake, that you just find people that will talk along with you, even as nice as it feels,
Well, I think for a woman, she wants to have that sense of comfort, and that's her job. That's her position. For a guy, he needs some accountability, and that accountability typically takes place within a body of believers. Or if he really chooses, he can find some accountability in a bar. He can go drink it away. Or he can go find it in another relationship. There's plenty of places to find accountability, but only one's been designated by God, and that's with your church family and friends. I know what you're talking about when a zealous person who's zealous to see the reconciliation or see this disaster that just happened, I'm going to fix this. They go running in there thinking that I'm going to convince this person that this is a mistake. Never happens. Person doesn't go, oh, you know what, you're right. I did make a mistake. No, they become more firmly entrenched.
Right, and I actually think the Bible even backs it up, because we think we have rights to a divorce. We think we have rights to our unhappiness, that we can change it. But it says in Matthew 19, verse 8, actually, it says, Jesus replies to kind of a divorce situation all there. It says, Moses permitted divorce only as a concession to your hard hearts, but it was not what God had originally intended. So what I'm reading out there, it's the heart that gets so hard that you actually have to really go do some searching within yourself to turn that around. Because I remember with me, It was a pain that turned into unforgiveness, and the unforgiveness turned into a hardness of heart, which turned into bitterness and into full hatred. And now we sit here together, right, in the same show, Happily Married. But that all took place. So once you get to that stage, what is it that people should do? I remember one of the things you told me at the time when you gave up, because it was almost 2 years, and you wanted to start dating people. And
Me?
Yeah, you were
Not
going.
quite. No. I didn't necessarily want to date other people. I had just said, I surrender. I surrender Barb. I surrender this whole concept of us getting back together. And I give myself to the Lord. And if he has me date somebody, fine, whatever. But it was never a sense that I'm going to start dating. It wasn't my surrender.
But you ended up not moving forward with that, because I was pretty mean to you.
Well, no, because I was firmly convinced that God had better plans for my life.
You chose not to.
As a kind of a tangent, I always recommend, and this is where it gets really hard, and this is, where a guy has made this transition.
I want to stop you right there.
Uh-huh.
What is he recommending? Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Our show is now in Pakistan. How amazing, how God works the impossible. And we are able to minister to 1.6% of the Christians, which is about 1 million people plus 70,000. They're hungry and they're begging us for material, and we're going to do it. I'm excited to start ministering to them, and I'm excited that you're going to help and be there with us. So I'm asking you right now, will you pray for the people there? Will you pray for them to be encouraged? Will you pray that they receive change? And if there's in any way that you would like to connect with us or partner with us and find more information about that, go to barbtv.org, and we can show you too how in simple ways you too can be part of making a difference in a country that is in desperate need of getting to know God Almighty. Go to barbtv.org and know you make a difference.
So the one thing to keep in mind is with those statistics, divorce is not uncommon. Nearly every relationship comes to a point of either termination or not. And it's how those people can overcome that point. And I've seen where the people that I've talked to, there's certain transition points that happen within the separation, just like what is the death sequence, everybody has those different. Well, with a divorce, one of the first things is, along with denial, they'll start coming back and trying to fix the problem or say, I'm going to take care of this. After that becomes frustration and anger, and they kind of rebel back. And then after that, they just say, fine, I'm going to leave you alone. But the one transition point that I've seen where men are beginning to make a change into a reconciliation state of mind is when they start praying for their wife or whoever. And they're not praying, bring her back to me. And they're not praying, help her to see what's wrong with her. They're praying, I just hope that she has the best life possible. I pray that she, Lord, you have a special plan for that wife or for her.
You're telling me to go from conditional to unconditional love?
It's a weird transition because at that transition, the man has truly surrendered her back to the Lord. A couple of real minor details to point out. Our experience, and most of the times the people we talk to, are within a church family. And so they recognize God as the authority. And so if it's the man and he recognizes God the authority, that's who he turns to. If it's the woman, she has a relationship with God, she does the same.
That's actually what happened to me at the time, because of course there is guys that go totally wrong, but there's also girls that can really, really blow it. So I definitely want to let you know, our viewer, that I could go both ways, but not focusing really about who's wrong or who's right now, but what do you do with you when you're in that situation? And I remember what that was for me, was that when I got to that point that I went back to God, and every time they tried to say, oh, is your ex-husband okay? I wanted to smack him, right? But and walked angry out of the church and stomped away and did all my stuff. But there was a point that I totally said, God, I want you. that running away, to stop. I want that making mistakes, because to try to get that guilt and that shame out of me away. I want you. And then once I did that, I said this crazy prayer. And that prayer was, I think I told you at the time, I said at that time was, if you want me back with him, you make it happen, because I'm not going to try. And I think that was actually the moment I gave God's like, fine, your way. And that's actually when it started for me.
We just talked about these transition points, these stages that happen. And what you just mentioned is here at this end, and the very beginning when all the disaster happens, there's like 20 chapters in there. And so that was chapter 20. The challenge is going through these 19 chapters and how you do it. And if on chapter 4 you're already starting to blast her with text messages, or you're already running around telling all your friends to, abandon her, or try to influence her, you're already blowing these first few chapters. It's a matter of getting through this to get her to that point, and that takes time.
Yeah, and it takes a huge amount of time for her.
And she cannot feel any sense like, oh, I'm doing this because it's what he wants, or I'm doing this because of somebody else's wants me to do it. It's like, God, how do I go through the rest of my life with peace with you?
Right, and I want to tell you, so how did we get back together? How did that actually happen? With me being so hateful and so angry, and I thought I had all these rights, right? I had all these rights. And I told you we prayed. I just shared that with you. But then there was one day that we were, Ken brought the kids back from child visitation, because yes, it does make a huge impact on the children. Even if you're hurt, they're hurting too. And yes, they think it's their fault, and you tell them it's not, but they're still hurting. And that was us all the way. And then the kids ran in, and I had this laundry basket that he handed back to me with the clothing folded. And to me, that was the first sign that he actually genuinely cared without trying to fix me to get back to him. And that was my God sign. And then we started dating and connecting. And to me, that was really that first moment. But there was always that fear. There was still that nervous between step. So what is it for a guy when he realizes there's been a mistake, like I realized I made a mistake, and you want to go back to God? What is it that he needs to reconcile with God to get to that next level you're talking about?
Well, something that got stuck in my head the way you were talking is in the Bible, it talks about how the two will become one, okay?
Guys love that verse.
Oh, yeah. We haven't even touched on the big one, the biggie.
Right.
But anyway, but when that happens, the woman has to look at the person she is becoming because of the other. And if she doesn't like what she sees, that's where she says, I'm splitting away from this. And I can't really remember how I was going on that track, but when the guy actually makes a transition out of that being that kind of a person, and that's a self-seeking, it's human nature just to self-serve yourself. And when he starts becoming different and starts serving God, she feels safe going back into that relationship.
Not right away though, because she's cautious, very cautious if that's the real him.
Sure.
Very cautious, and he could be really cautious if that's the real her. Mm-hmm. Is she going to have an affair on him all over again? Or can the trust level is a huge one. And I remember the trust, even if we remarried, the trust had been broken, and that was on both ways. So when that trust is broken, and I think what the biggest struggle is that people can't expect from the other person that trust level is fixed in a minute. It takes time.
Well, right now, I know there's people that are watching, and they all have a different story. They all have a different set of circumstances. Fine. But they're all same kind of responses. That's the difference. Different circumstances, same kinds of response. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to force her to make this right. I'm going to try to make everything right and do all these things. Or I'm just going to totally abandon her. She has to suffer through this. And the end result that I've seen where positive things can happen through really terrible circumstances is when the parties decide that their lives are going to be steered by God's will and not their own.
That's a hard one to choose, because you have to surrender your angry and hurting feelings and go from there.
Yeah.
If you could give a good piece of advice right now to those who are out there that are wanting to fix their marriage but really don't know how, what would it be?
Well, easy. Start if you're already experiencing some challenges in your marriage. And by the way, really quickly, there were some indications about our marriage beginning to fall apart, but I didn't see them because I'm just a guy. I'm straight thinking. But when you're suddenly in those circumstances, do get some books. Don't let your ex know that you're reading these books. Start reading them on your own. That's probably the best way to get things right.
That's a start. And get some godly counsel.
And then godly counsel, yeah.
Ken, thanks for being on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing God really hates, and yes, I'm going to throw it at you because it's in the Bible, and I think you need to hear this right now. A mistake I made that I don't recommend for you to make the same. And it says it right here, for it's written by Paul in Corinthians, right in the Bible, which is inspired by God. For I'm afraid that when I come, I won't like what I find, and you won't like my response. I'm afraid that I will find quarreling, jealousy, anger, selfishness, slander, gossip, arrogance, and disorderly behavior. And my friend, I just want to let you know right now, try to not do the gossip. God despises it, and it causes more problems. And I was the gossip pro during that time that relation was hurting. Instead of gossiping, take it up there. And you will see, when God fixes it for us, that He can do the same for you. Call us so we can minister to you, so we can talk to you. It's 855-515-5550, or go to our website at barbtv.org. And the best thing I ever did was say, God, bring me back your way, your life. Give me the abundance life and show me how. And when I didn't like it, but surrendered to Him, the answer was better than ever before. And that, my friend, is what God wants for you. There are answers out there. Tell them about me. And tell them what I went through, and tell them that I know what they are dealing with. And okay, and the most interesting thing happened. Because the more I prayed in tongues, even sometimes if I prayed in tongues for an hour or even 3 hours and did not know what I was saying, throughout the days, there were these revelations that were being fed to me, and these aha moments, and things I learned about people, or clarifications or revelations that just came out of nowhere now. You take the entire swimming pool and you're jumping in with all you've got, and you say, I want it all. God will reveal things through you when you start praying in the Spirit in a way that you will learn and grow. And what I wanted to do with you right now is, what are the differences? What are the differences from going all the way or a little bit?